Ms. Lubin, Ms. Walsh said that fraud can come from many corners. Your testimony highlights how crypto fraud continues to be a top concern for your member agencies. Elaborate, if you would, on what makes crypto assets so attractive to scam artists and so risky for investors. Sort of walk that through with us.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. One of the things that makes it very attractive to scam artists is that the market is not transparent. So when we educate investors, we say to them, okay, get in touch with your regulator, look the person up, look the promoter up, look the product up. But with crypto, there's no place to look it up. There's no disclosure that's given to investors for them to understand the risks attendant to purchasing that product. There's nothing to say that the market might tank. There's nothing to say that these are the people who are involved in making sure that the market works. So there's no place for them to go to really get information and the material information that they need in order to make an informed decision. The other thing that's really important is that, as Jerry alluded to, scam artists are always paying attention to what's in the news. It's what I like to call the scam du jour. So investors are out there and they're hearing crypto, 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 and they think this is a great idea. And then the scam artists custom tailor their pitches to investors for something that's attracted to them or that they're hearing about, so they think this is a good idea. So they're that more susceptible to being pitched on an investment and investing their hard-earned money into these kinds of products.
Thank you. Ms. Walsh, so taking off on what she said, we know that bad actors often target groups. They read about it daily in the paper, she said, where they can exploit trusted relationships or community ties. This type of affinity fraud is especially destructive because in some sense victims suffer twice. First, they lose their hard-earned money, and then they feel betrayed by someone whom they trusted. How have those frauds evolved in recent years?
In many ways, the frauds have new clothing. Fraudsters can turn on a dime when it comes to changing their pitches, but the fundamentals of the fraud remain the same. People try, the con criminals behind these scams try to gain trust. They infiltrate a community, they build social consensus, exactly to bring down the barriers that an investor might otherwise have to considering the fraud. They gain that trust. It's the use of psychological tactics and persuasion. But we do see that there are frauds that are targeted toward particular communities, and that's why it's so important to reach out to communities, to be in communities where people live and learn and work, so that we can share the information that we have as regulators.
So then, too often the victim is blamed for these losses. Talk through what more can be done to shift the focus on the perpetrators rather than the blaming the victim, as we so often do.
Absolutely, because when we blame victims, when we shame them when they come forward to talk about what happened to them, that actually discourages people from coming forward. And as FINRA has found, as I'm sure state securities regulators have found, other regulators, we need people who have been harmed to come forward and complain. We need them to talk about what's happening, because fraud has devastating consequences, not only with respect to financial loss, but there are non-financial elements of loss to financial fraud. That can include lack of sleep, losing a job, losing a spouse. There are all these additional consequences that can't be measured by the amount of money that was lost that can happen when fraud occurs. And so the FINRA Foundation has been working with AARP and a research firm to better understand victim blaming and shaming, why it happens, how it happens, and how we can combat it. Just recently, we issued a report on this issue, which is available in the testimony that I provided to you in the appendix. We'd be happy to discuss it further with you or with any members of the committee.
And as victims are shamed, it seems, and going back to Ms. Lubin's comments about the Daily News putting this out here and encouraging the scam artists, and this is I want you both to comment. Start with Ms. Walsh. One of the talking points, and I hear it among, including some of my Democratic colleagues, one of the talking points of crypto proponents is that technology will promote financial inclusion, that the unbanked especially can benefit from this. That appeals to many working families who just don't, as you said, Ms. Lubin, don't trust Wall Street or the financial financial institutions generally, in many cases for good reason. Following the recent, so my question from Walsh, you would start following the recent collapse of crypto platforms. We've heard stories about significant losses by investors in communities of color. Has financial inclusion using crypto been a realistic goal, or is it just another sales gimmick?
Senator, I appreciate the question because advancing financial inclusion is one of the most important pillars of the work that the FINRA Foundation is doing through investor education. It is critical that we educate people about our financial markets, how they work, what the risks are, so that they do feel comfortable engaging in those markets and they understand the risks that are available. Education is not a panacea. There needs to be clear and consistent regulation that allows for disclosure of important issues so that investors can, in fact, in the crypto space, understand the risks that they're taking, understand how their investments might be used, for example, through lending, and also getting information from the companies.
Ms. Lubin, your comments, and I'll close. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator. As I had mentioned in my opening statement, we have a lot of concerns about the marketing in this space generally. And the marketing pitches are tailored to the recipients of the pitches. So the idea with some communities of color that people are being shut out of the markets and things like that resonates. So the idea that this would somehow democratize investing has been an attractive pitch to people, but it has not panned out to be that way. And unfortunately, communities of color have been disproportionately affected by the losses. Again, it's, the opportunistic marketing materials and the pitches by the promoters are really what will resonate with the investor, and the investors that are attracted to that kind of pitch and with whom those representations resonate end up being disproportionately affected by what's happened. So I think really what has ended up happening is, unfortunately for certain demographics, this has been not as much of an opportunity to catch the American dream as an opportunity to become a victim of fraud.
And surely the biggest gainers from crypto have not been people of color. So thank you, Senator Toomey.